What's up, developers? This is chapter 8 of my Cloudflare and Hono course. And in this chapter, we'll be deploying to Cloudflare. And a quick outline for this chapter. So, first, we're going to configure our wrangler.jsonc file for separate staging and production environments. Second, we'll add some Wrangler scripts for deploying. Third, we'll deploy and verify that it's working. And then fourth, we'll enable Cloudflare Access so only authorized people can access the website until the website is ready for real users. And the last thing I want to say is this chapter assumes you've already created a Cloudflare account. It's very easy to sign up, and everything I will do in this course will be within the free tier, so you will not need to spend any money if you're coding along with me. Cool. So with that outline out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the code. So here I am on the Cloudflare documentation, and I have found their staging and production environments examples. So this is perfect. This is exactly what we're looking for. We want two separate environments, a staging environment where we can push code and test things out, that's separate from production, where our users will actually be using production. And we want to protect our staging environment with authentication. So only people on our team could access the staging environment. We don't want it to be publicly available to everyone out there in the world because it's a testing environment where we're pushing code before we know if it's fully ready or not. So what we can do is we can copy some of this code here. I'm going to copy everything for these environments. And then jumping over here to VS Code, I'm here in my wrangler.jsonc, and I'm going to just paste that code in here. And I may have missed a curly brace, so there we go. And let's take a look at what we have then, and do a Command S save to format the file. So here we have a staging and production environment. So that's good. That's what we want. But they added these routes with the staging.example.com, and we're not going to need that. And then a route here with example.com again. So let's get rid of that kind of dummy information. And then here, each environment has separate variables. So we have an environment variable that just specifies staging and production. And that's a really good start. I think that's what we need for the moment. So the next thing that we need to add to our wrangler.jsonc file is going to be assets. So here, if I add in a new line and add this in, assets. Now, the reason why we're adding this is because we have a full stack application. So we have a separate front end and back end. And our front end, which is our Astro client, this client directory, when we build this with for a production build, it's going to output into this dist here. This is our production folder. And so we need to build these static front end files, and we need to tell Cloudflare to serve those static front end files. And so that's what we're doing here. So what we can say is we can tell it the directory where to get those files from. So let's specify that. And then that will be our dist, and that's for distribution. So that will be our production front end. And then we also need to add a binding of assets. And that tells the Cloudflare worker that these assets should be served when someone is trying to access our website. Okay, cool. So now we have that. And if you'll notice here, I'm getting a little yellow warning about a trailing comma. So when I delete that and I press Command Save, it automatically formats it. And so if you remember from an earlier chapter, we set up prettier. So prettier by default will add that trailing comma. So we don't want that in the wrangler.jsonc. It's complaining. It's not happy about that. So we can add an override to tell it not to do the trailing comma in the JSON-C file. So let's come over here. We'll say files and then add an option. And find trailing comma. There it is. And it says all, but that's not what I want. I want none. Okay. Now if we come back over here and I click save, there we go. It cleans up all of the commas. So they're all gone now, which is great. It's really annoying when you save a file and it puts bad formatting in there. Now our Wrangler config is all ready for us to deploy. So the next thing we need is a script to run the deployment. So we can add scripts to our package.json, and here with our other scripts, we can add in some new ones. So first, Cloudflare has an option for a dry run, which is great. So we can do the deployment dry run without actually deploying and check to see if everything is going to work. So let's add in a dry run script. And what we want to do is we want to build our client and then check to see if the Wrangler deployment will be successful. And the reason why we want to build the client is because it's going to look at this dist folder. And right now, this dist folder is outdated. I built this in one of the earlier chapters, and I've made changes to the code since then. And so I want to make sure the dist file is always up to date when deploying. So I'm actually going to rename this from build to build client to be more specific. So their build client, we know exactly what's going on because this is only building our front end. And then in here we can say bun run build client, and that will run our build script and update our dist folder. And then after that, so we can say and to run the next command, we can say wrangler deploy dry run. Okay, so now that I have this dry run script, let's go ahead and run it and see what happens. So I can open up the terminal and say bun run dry run. All right, now let's take a look at these logs that it output for us. So we can see it ran our script and did the Astro build, and that's our static front end. So the output static. It found one warning around generated CSS. I'm not worried about this warning about generated CSS. This is going to be fine, so we're going to skip over that. And we can see it built our new dist folder. So we now have the updated front end. And then we get a warning down here saying multiple environments are defined in the Wrangler config file, but no target environment was specified for the deployment command. Okay, so this is a great warning. This is really helpful because what it's saying is inside of our Wrangler JSON, we have two environments, staging and production. But I did not specify whether my dry run should deploy to staging or production. So we want to go ahead and add that update in. So it's saying you can use this dash env flag in order to update this. So what we can do is come back over here, say dash dry run dash env, and then staging. So let's say this is dry run staging. Copy that. Now let's try it again. All right, there we go. So it completed and we don't get that warning this time. So down here under Cloudflare, we can see it sets up the assets, and that's going to be our dist folder again, and environment of staging. Okay, so that all looks good. All right, now let's go ahead and do the same thing for prod. So we want to go ahead and copy and paste this and change this to production. And then we can change this to prod. And then we can go ahead and run it and make sure that it works. Oh, getting a little funkiness there. Let's clear that. Run. All right, and then we can see environment of production and everything looks good. So just that same CSS warning. Otherwise, it worked. Cool. So now what we can do is we can add in our actual deployment scripts. So we're going to want one for staging and one for production. So let's call this one deployment staging. And this is going to also build the client. And then Wrangler deploy. And we'll just leave off the dry run that we had before and say --env and then staging. And then let's go ahead and copy and paste that, change this to production and prod. Okay, so now you might be thinking, how does it know where to deploy? How does it know to deploy to my account? And what's going to happen is when we run this script for the first time, it's going to prompt us to log in to our Cloudflare account. So that's how it knows. And then there is a Wrangler command as well to check your login if in the future we need to do that. But let's go ahead and just test out the deploy staging. So we did the dry run. We know that it works. And then it should prompt us to log in and go from there. So bun run deploy staging. And there we go. I was prompted to log in. So it brought me over to my browser, as you can see, signed in as Nick Olson Codes. So that's me. And allow Wrangler access to your Cloudflare account. And I want to allow that because it's my account and that's working as expected. So I click allow and you have granted authorization. So now it's going to save my login to my computer here. Whenever I use the Wrangler CLI, feel free to close the browser window. Okay, cool. I'll close that out and then I can take a look at my account. Well, before we do, let's go back over to VS Code and double check the logs, make sure we didn't see any errors or anything. And what I'm seeing is all looking good. So we got the same build. So build our front end as expected. And then attempting to log in and it redirected us, which is what happened. So that all looks good. Uploaded 6 of 6 assets. So taking a look at our dist, we can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 files. So that makes sense. We got 6 files from our folder uploaded successfully and it went into staging. Okay, cool. So everything appears to be working and it even gave us here the Cloudflare Hono waitlist template staging Nick Olson codes worker.dev. So that's a mouthful. So if we go ahead and click on this and open, check it out. Here we are in the browser and I've got my JavaScript dojo and we can see that the server is healthy as well. So it was able to fetch from our Cloudflare worker. So if we talk about quickly just what happened when we access this page, first, it gave me the static assets to create the front end, and then it went and hit the health endpoint. So we can see that here at /API/health, and then got back our healthy response, which is great confirmation that we know our front end and our back end are working together. They are connected. So we tested that locally, and now we have it live on the internet. So now if I go over to my Cloudflare dashboard, so if you're on, I'm on the home page here, and then you can go down to compute and AI, and you can see your workers here in workers and pages. And now we can see Cloudflare Hono waitlist template staging. So it will automatically um, append that staging word on the end for your staging environment, which is nice and handy. And then we can click into here and we can see a lot of different information about our worker. So we can see it has the assets, and that's good. That's our front end. And then there are some metrics. Okay, we've now got 3 requests because I hit refresh a couple times on there. And we can see our deployments and our bindings. There's an observability that's not enabled yet, and settings. So there's a lot that we have at our fingertips here to work with. Now, I want to point out one other thing here. So I pulled up this bundling documentation here, and what you might be thinking is if I come over here to our code and you say, okay, so we built the client, so we made this production build for our client, but we didn't do a production build for our worker, for our server. So our server file didn't get optimized for production, but that's actually not the case. Lucky for us, Wrangler deploy does that production build automatically. So if we come back over here to the docs, we can see there's this bundling, and it says by default, Wrangler bundles your worker code using ES-Build. So if you haven't used ES-Build before it's a bundler, and it is known for its performance. And it can take your JavaScript, CSS, TypeScript, JSX files and bundle them all together into a production build with tree shaking, minification, etc., some other advanced stuff. So all of that to say is that ES Build will take our code, our server code, and turn it into a production build that's ready to go. And all of that happens by default. So if, for example, you needed to do your own build process for some reason, maybe your app is more advanced and you have some special config, there is a way to do that here. I'm not going to do that in this course. The built-in bundler is great and it satisfies our needs here. But I just wanted to make you aware that that's an option if you ever need that in the future. Okay, so the last thing that we're going to do here is we are going to protect our staging environment. So right now, this is live on the internet and anyone could access this worker, but it's not ready for users yet. So we want a way to protect this and make sure that only I can access it, or if there are people on your team, that people on your team could access it. So there is Cloudflare Access, and here on the docs, I came over and just showed you here's the access controls policies, but ultimately Cloudflare Access determines who can reach your application by applying the access policies you configure. So this is basically going to be authentication that will protect our website until we're ready to show it to the public. So in order to enable Cloudflare Access, we can go over to the dashboard and click on settings. And then from here, we can see our workers dev URL. Click on the 3 dots, and there is Cloudflare Access that we can enable. Now, it gives us this little pop-up, and it's important to call out the important. So we need to update your worker script to validate access JWTs, or your application won't be secure. Only users in your Cloudflare account can access this domain. Okay, so that's good. That I just want people in my account, which is just me, to be able to access this domain. But I need to update the script to validate JWTs. So they give us a couple of values here, an audience and a JWK's URL. And both of these are public values. So we're going to add these into our wrangler.jsonc. And here they have some documentation that will also show us an example. So here the Cloudflare workers example. And I had a duplicate tab of that. And basically what we can see here is they use a package called Jose, and then they check for a policy audience, otherwise respond with missing, and then check for a token, and then verify that token. So we can copy paste this code and then just tweak it a little bit for Hono, and then this will validate users as they try and access our website. All right, so back over here on my Cloudflare dashboard, I'm going to copy these values and I'm going to jump over to VS Code and I'm going to pull up the wrangler.jsonc and we're going to add these values in here. So under environments, this is specifically for our staging environment. So these will be variables and I'm going to add them in here. So first one we'll say is going to be this URL. And the second one will be this string here. So now the question is, what do we call these things exactly? So if I jump back over to the code example, they call it a policy audience here. And then down here, we can say they call it environment team domain. And then they actually append this on manually and just have the domain. So I'm going to copy them and go by their best practices here. But team domain seems kind of ambiguous to me. Policy audience makes sense. So this one right here, this is going to be our policy audience. And this one, if I go ahead and remove that last part, the same way they are doing, then I'm going to call this the Cloudflare Access domain because we can see that's what it is, cloudflareaccess.com. So I like to call things what they are and make life easy. So CF for Cloudflare Access domain. Okay, cool. So now we've got our two variables in here. And the next thing we're going to want to do is create a middleware. So this code right here that validates users as they reach our site, I want to put this code into a middleware that will run every single time someone tries to access our worker. So people will get validated every time. And so to do that, first I can go ahead and just copy that, jump back over to VS Code, and here in our server folder, I'm going to add a new folder called middlewares, or just middleware singular. And then I'll add in a new file and I'll call this auth. Now to create a custom Hono middleware, we can quickly go look up the documentation for it to see an example. So if I say Hono middleware, click on this. Here we're on the documentation and we can see here custom middleware. So it says you can write your middleware directly inside of an app.use, like this example. However, embedding middleware limits its reusability. So what we want to do is use this create middleware function that they have down here to make it more reusable and ensure we don't lose type definitions. So here we can import create middleware from the Hono factory and do something like this. So let's copy that code chunk, jump back over to VS Code and paste it here. And then we're not going to have a logger. This is going to be authentication. and we're going to want to export this. So export const and rename this to access auth. Seems reasonable. Now I can go ahead and delete everything that's in here. So we have a blank slate, and I'm going to paste the code we got from the docs. So that would be this chunk of code here. Put that in, and now I'm gonna have to tweak some things, and let me go ahead and toggle that so we get some more space to work with. So here we have an extra export, so we want to get rid of that and get rid of this line as well. So delete those two, and then double check, because I know I've got some curly braces down here at the bottom that don't belong anymore. So that would be these two. Get rid of them. Okay. And now we have an import that should really be at the top. So this is a new package that we need to install. So if we jump back over to their documentation, they said the following code will validate the JWT using this package. So let's click on that and take a look. And this is a JavaScript module for signing and encryption. And it's got 20 million weekly downloads, and Cloudflare has validated this. So I'm going to go ahead and install this package. So npm I Jose or Jose, I'm not quite sure. Open up the terminal, but I'm going to do bun add Jose. I guess I'll go with that. Okay, so it's installed now. Can shrink my terminal. Okay, so now let's clean up some more of this. So the environment policy audience. So we have this policy audience set in our wrangler.jsonc, but it is not on, or it is on the environment, but first we need to pull it off of the C for context. So that'll be c.environment.policy audience. And then this is just returning a new response, and we want to change this so it is working with Hono. So it'll be c.json. So I want everything to be in JSON, and then I can say missing. Here, I'll copy paste it. There we go. And then they send a status of 403. And so we can put that status there for us. And they do headers content type of text plain. But this, we're doing it in JSON, so that is fine. So I can delete this now. And so if they, or if our policy audience isn't set in our environment, then this error will get thrown. And I think that's self-explanatory, so I'll get rid of that comment now. And now get the JWT from their request headers. And in order to do this with Hono, we can get it with c.rec.header. Rec.header. There we go. And then we can leave that the same. And then check if the token exists. So, yep, we can update this one as well to be return c.json. Put that there, and then also a response of 403. And then get rid of all of that. All right. So now we try here to, it says create remote JWK set. And we need to use our URL, which I did not call team domain. I called Cloudflare Access domain. And then we need to put the C in front of here too. So context.environment.cloudflare access domain. And then this will be the same. So that is looking good. And then verify the JWT. So we get the token. There's, our JWKs and our issuer. So here we want to do the same c.env. Let's see. Cloudflare access domain and then our policy audience. So that will verify the token against these values. All right. And then here, if the token is valid, proceed with the application logic. Okay. So this would return a new response, hello, with the payload, email, and authenticated user. We actually don't need to send back the email or authenticated user if somebody gets successfully signed in. We just want to then direct them to the website. So instead of returning that, what we can do is await next. And this is going to, this comes from up top here. So create middleware, context, and next. Next means move on to the next middleware. This one is done. So we're not going to return this. We're just going to say, hey, this was successful. So you can go ahead and continue and move on to the next middleware if there are others. If this fails, so if verifying fails, this is going to throw an error. And then now that we're not using the payload, I'm going to get rid of that, clean up that comment. We have a try catch here. So this will catch the error, and then this is saying invalid token, some error message, and 403. So we can go ahead and convert this to Hono syntax. So that would be return c.json, and we can copy this bit of code and say status of 403, meaning not authenticated. Okay, and now it's unhappy here. So TypeScript is saying error is of type unknown, so we don't know that there's a message on there, but we really do know that there is. So what we can say here to make TypeScript happy is const error equals here error as error. So that way we're telling TypeScript that this is in fact of type error, which has a message on it. All right, and then command save to format. So now we're getting somewhere. Let's double check everything. We've cleaned up all this code, so now it matches Hono syntax instead of just the syntax that they gave us out of the box. And now the next thing we want to do is use this function inside of our main index router. So if I copy that, come over here to index, then what I want to do is bring that down, say app.use, and paste that in there, and then add the import and command save for formatting. Cool. So now our Hono app has this use middleware, and we provide it our reusable middleware, which will run before all of our different API requests. So nobody will be able to access our worker if they're not authenticated. All right, so let's go ahead and give this a try locally and see what happens. So we can run our dev script and check it out. So bun run dev. All right, so we can see our front end started up here on port 4321 and our worker on 8787. So if we click on our front end, we can see we were able to access the client, and that's because this is a separate port, and it says missing required audience. So if I come over to the network tab, hit refresh, and we can see the health endpoint. So it tried to hit this and it got 403 forbidden, which is exactly what we're looking for. We want it to authenticate. So it seems that things are working here for local development. And now what I want to do is push this up to our staging environment and test it out there and see what that looks like. So if I close that down, over here in our package.json, we can see we had our scripts for deploying. So we have a dry run staging and a deploy staging. So we can give that a go. Do the dry run to make sure everything looks good. All right. And I'm not seeing any errors, just the one CSS warning, and that's fine. We're going to ignore that. And we can see our different environment variables that we've declared. So yeah, everything is looking good. So now let's go ahead and deploy it to staging. Run. Okay, so the deployment was successful. Let's go check out our dashboard. And that's localhost. I'll close that. And done with that for now. And close that. Clean up most of this stuff. Okay, so just back to the dashboard. All right, and now if I go ahead and click on this link, let's see what it does for us. All right, cool. So this is promising. We get the Cloudflare Access. All right, so you want to access, the staging environment for Cloudflare workers. You need a login code emailed to you. Okay, so that's good. And now let's enter my email and send me the code. All right. Then pop open Gmail here, Cloudflare. Here's my code. Paste it in. And I'm in. All right. So now I can see JavaScript Dojo and I can see that it is healthy. So that is all working. We now have a staging environment that is protected from the public. Only people on our team can access it. Now, you might be thinking, well, couldn't anyone still access this? Because all you had to do was enter your email address and then you got a code. But that's actually not the case. So if we come over here to Cloudflare and I click on the button here and I can click on Manage Cloudflare Access, it'll pop me up to the access policy information. So here I can click on the policies that we have active. And when we toggled that little button over here, this one, it created this policy. So allow members, Cloudflare workers. It's apparently a legacy one, but the way this works is anyone who is in the allowed member list will get an email. So include emails, Nick Olson codes. So this is the only email that is allowed. So anyone else who puts an email and any different email address in will not get a code. So this means that the website is protected. So this staging environment can only be accessed by me because my email is the only allowed email. Now, the thing is, we have a issue with local development. So as we were trying out before, when I did bun run dev, it's telling us that we need a required audience or missing required audience. So the thing is, I don't really want to deal with these authentication, any of this authentication when developing locally. I want my local development to be seamless and easy. So there's a way for us to get around this, and that is we can end the server, and we can say that if this is local develop, then let's skip the authentication. So what that would look like is basically c.environment dot if that equals development, then we can simply await next, and it will skip the rest of this auth logic. So now we need to add development, the environment and development to our local. So to do that, we can add in a .env file, and I can say environment equals development. All right. And then what's good practice is to copy this and have a .env .example, because the .env, we want it to be ignored. So, and it's already in the git ignore, so that will not be pushed up, just in case we had some actual secrets. At the moment we don't, but the env example will show whoever grabs this repo what they need in order to run it locally. So with that added, and with this, now we can go ahead and give this a try locally and see if we bypass that auth. All right, click on that. And there we go. Okay, localhost, and we get our status of healthy. So everything's working there. And then as another sanity check, I am going to delete that email. I'm going to push these changes up to Cloudflare again. So kill the server and say bun run deploy staging. Just go ahead and fire that off. All right. So now those changes should be up. Come over to the dashboard and check the deployments. And yep, there we go. We see a few seconds ago by me, we just had a new deployment come in. And so if I come back over here and refresh, everything is working here as well. And if I were to try and access this, let's say from an incognito browser, then I should get that login again. So where's a new incognito window? There we go. Okay, so the login is still working, and then I could put my email back in here, and I guess why not? Confirm everything is working as expected, and then I need to switch back over to my other browser and grab this code. And now I can place this in here. And I'm in. Okay, cool. So all of the authentication is working as expected, and we now can develop locally as well without dealing with the authentication. Cool. So we're live on Cloudflare. It was an exciting chapter. And in the next chapter, we are going to start looking at our database. So happy coding and Godspeed.